7 years ago, the man I loved walked away and left me pregnant, alone, and invisible. Tonight I walked into his world again, holding the hand of the son he never knew existed. He was rich, powerful, admired by everyone in the room. I was the woman he thought he erased. But when his eyes landed on my child, everything he built began to crack. I didn't come back for revenge. I came back with the truth. And nothing terrifies a man more than the life he chose to abandon, standing right in front of him. 7 years is a long time to carry a silence. I didn't plan to walk into the Sterling ballroom with my heart in my throat. I told myself it was just business, a contract, a room full of people who talked in numbers instead of feelings. But the moment the glass doors opened and warm gold lights spilled onto the marble floor, I felt the old wound wake up like it had been waiting for me. Eli squeezed my hand so tight his small fingers turned pale. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely louder than the soft music drifting across the room. "That man is looking at you." My blood chilled. I turned slowly, like a person turning toward a storm she already knows will hurt. Across the ballroom, standing in a circle of executives in tailored suits, was Logan Pierce. Tall, perfectly pressed, a champagne flute in his hand like he was born holding one. The kind of man who looked untouchable until you knew the truth. And the truth was, 7 years ago, he left me pregnant on the doorstep of my apartment without even stepping inside. His eyes met mine. For a second, everything else disappeared. The music, the murmurs, the glittering chandeliers, the trays of delicate food I couldn't pronounce. There was only that look, shock first, then something like panic, as if his body recognized a mistake his mind had spent years trying to erase. Logan's hand trembled. The champagne rippled in the glass. "Impossible," I saw his lips form, though I couldn't hear the word. Eli pressed closer to my side instinctively, like he could feel the air changing. He was 6 now, big enough to sense tension even if he didn't understand it, big enough to notice when people's smiles didn't reach their eyes. I kept walking. Every step felt loud on the marble, like the ballroom itself was counting down. Heads turned, whispers started, the kind that slithered, not the kind that welcomed. "She's here. Who is that? That's her?" It was funny how quickly strangers could decide you were a story they wanted to gossip about. I adjusted my shoulders, lifted my chin, and reminded myself why I was here. Meridian Build Group didn't send me to impress anyone. They sent me because the Sterling Green District deal was worth more than pride. It could change my company. It could change the city. And if I had learned anything in 7 years, it was that you don't let fear make decisions for you. But fear still lived in my chest. It just had better manners now. Logan stepped forward before I reached the center of the room. He moved like someone who'd been waiting for this moment, but still wasn't ready. "Maya," he said, low, urgent. "Please, just 1 minute." I stopped. Not because I owed him anything, because running had never protected me. I'd spent too many years fighting to stand in my own life, and I wasn't about to shrink now. Eli's hand tightened around mine. Logan's gaze dropped to him, and I watched with a strange, detached clarity as something in Logan's face collapsed. Because Eli had his eyes, that exact warm brown, that same line in the jaw, like a photograph of Logan at 6 years old, brought to life in front of him. Logan's mouth parted, like he couldn't get enough air. His voice broke. "He's mine," I said, the words sharp enough to cut. "And he's not your concern." Because I could not let myself believe I was about to see regret soften him. I could not let myself hope. Hope was the most expensive thing I'd ever paid for. Logan reached out like his hand had its own memory. He tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. 7 years ago, he stepped away first. A polished hand slid possessively onto Logan's shoulder, and I didn't even need to look to know who it was. The entire room seemed to tilt with her presence. Savannah Keene. She appeared at his side like she'd been summoned by trouble. Blonde, elegant, wrapped in a red gown that looked like it had been stitched from confidence. Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were hard. "Logan," she said smoothly, still smiling at the crowd more than at him. "Who is this?" Logan didn't answer, and the silence was loud enough to pull people closer. It was the kind of silence that begged for a spectacle. Savannah's gaze swept over me, from the navy dress I'd chosen like armor to the neat bun at the base of my neck. Then her eyes landed on Eli and something flickered. Recognition or calculation, I couldn't tell. Her smile widened. "Oh," she said, like she just remembered my name from a story she enjoyed repeating. "You're Maya Hart." I held her stare. "And you are?" Savannah laughed softly. "Savannah, Logan's wife." Eli's eyes lifted to her, curious and innocent, because he hadn't learned yet how cruel adults could be in rooms like this. Savannah angled her body slightly, so she stood between Logan and me without fully blocking him. It was subtle, practiced. "And this," she continued, her voice still honeyed, "is the little boy you brought to make an entrance?" Heat crawled up my spine. Eli leaned closer to me, reading the shift in my breathing like he always did. I kept my voice calm. "He's my son. He goes where I go." Savannah nodded as if that confirmed something she already believed. Then she tilted her head, looking at me like I was a problem she intended to solve in public. "You know," she said, just loud enough for the nearest circle to hear, "Logan mentioned you once, a long time ago. A misunderstanding." Logan's face tightened. "Savannah?" But she didn't stop. She never stopped when she thought she was winning. "A misunderstanding where a girl tried to trap a man with a pregnancy," she said, and the word pregnancy landed like a slap. The air around us thickened. People pretended not to listen while listening harder than ever. I looked at Logan. I waited for one sentence, one correction, 1 ounce of decency. His eyes dropped, and in that moment, the betrayal felt fresh again, like 7 years hadn't passed at all. Like I was still 25, still standing in my doorway watching him choose comfort over character. Eli's voice trembled. "Mom, why is she being mean?" I knelt beside him, forced my smile to stay gentle. "Some people forget that words can hurt," I whispered. "But you didn't do anything wrong, okay?" He nodded, but his lip quivered, and something inside me hardened into steel. I stood up slowly. Savannah's smile sharpened. "If he really were Logan's," she said, "don't you think you would have done something about it? Filed for support? Proved it?" I drew in a breath, and my voice came out steady. "I didn't need his money," I said. "I needed him to be a man." A few heads turned fully now. Logan's throat bobbed as he swallowed. His eyes were glossy, but that didn't move me. Tears after the fact were cheap. Savannah's gaze narrowed. "So why are you here?" I could have said the truth. "Because my company's proposal changed your entire skyline, and your empire needs my mind more than I ever needed your husband's name." But before I could speak, a deep voice cut through the tension, calm and commanding. "Dr. Maya Hart." The room shifted, and I felt for the first time that night that the story might not belong to Savannah Keene. I turned toward the voice, my pulse hammering, because whoever had just spoken my name like that didn't sound like someone asking who I was. He sounded like someone reminding the room, and as I looked up, I wondered if Logan was finally about to lose the one thing he'd never had to fight for: control. If you were in my place, standing there with your child's hand in yours and your past staring you down, would you still stay in that room? Yes or no? "Dr. Maya Hart," the voice carried weight, not loud, not rushed, certain. Conversations nearby slowed, then stopped, like someone had lowered the volume on the room. I turned. A tall man with silver-threaded hair and an easy, confident posture stepped forward from the crowd. His suit was immaculate, but it wasn't the clothes that drew attention. It was the way people instinctively made space for him, the way eyes followed him without being asked. "Graham Whitaker," he said, offering his hand. His smile was warm, genuine. "I've been looking for you all evening." For a split second, I forgot how to breathe. Logan went pale. Savannah's hand slipped from his arm. I took Graham's hand, grounding myself in the solid reality of the moment. "Mr. Whitaker, it's a pleasure." "The pleasure is mine," he replied, and then, with perfect timing, he looked around. "May I say, the Sterling Green District proposal your team submitted is the most compelling vision I've seen in years." A ripple moved through the crowd. Not whispers now, attention. Savannah blinked. "Proposal?" Graham tilted his head as if only just noticing her. "Yes, Meridian Build Group. Dr. Hart is the lead architect." The silence that followed was sharp and electric. Savannah looked at me again, but this time the calculation in her eyes cracked. "You're the architect?" I nodded. "Yes." Logan stared at the floor like it might swallow him whole. Graham continued, blissfully unaware or expertly pretending not to notice the wreckage at our feet. "I was hoping you'd be willing to present the concept to our investors tonight. 15 minutes. The materials are ready. My heart slammed against my ribs. Tonight? I looked at Eli. He was watching me with wide eyes, trying to understand why the room suddenly felt different. Why people who had judged moments ago were now waiting. I didn't bring my presentation, I said carefully. Graham waved a hand. We had your team send it over this afternoon. I like to be prepared. Prepared, the word echoed. Savannah let out a short, disbelieving laugh. You can't be serious. This is a social event. It's a business event, Graham replied calmly. Always has been. Logan finally found his voice. Graham? Graham's gaze flicked to him. Yes, Logan? Something in that single word sounded like a reminder of hierarchy. You didn't mention you knew Dr. Hart, Graham said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. Logan swallowed. We knew each other years ago. I met Graham's eyes. A long time ago, he studied my face for half a second longer than necessary, then smiled. Well, that explains the tension. Business has a way of running into life, doesn't it? A few people chuckled nervously. Savannah crossed her arms. And you're just going to let her stand here after making a scene? Graham didn't even glance at her. From what I saw, she handled herself with remarkable composure. I felt something loosen in my chest, just a little. He turned to me again. Are you comfortable presenting tonight? I thought of 7 years ago, of crying on a bathroom floor, pregnant and alone, wondering how I would survive. Of nights spent working after Eli fell asleep, coffee cold, eyes burning, telling myself I didn't need anyone's permission to build something meaningful. I straightened my shoulders. Yes, I said, I am. Graham clapped once, decisive. Excellent. We'll begin in 10 minutes. As he walked away to gather the investors, the room buzzed, not with gossip, but curiosity. People approached me with new expressions now. Polite, interested, respectful. Cards appeared in hands that had previously pointed fingers. Eli tugged my dress. Mom, are you famous? I knelt, smiling softly. No, sweetheart, I just work hard. He nodded, satisfied. Can I have juice? I laughed under my breath. Yes, you can have juice. A server appeared as if summoned by the word. Eli took his cup and settled into a nearby chair, swinging his legs. When I stood again, Logan was still there, alone now. Savannah had stepped back, her face tight, jaw clenched. Maya, Logan said quietly. I didn't know. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who once chose fear over love, over responsibility. You didn't ask, I replied. He flinched. I never needed you to save me, I continued, keeping my voice low. I needed you not to disappear. I was scared, he whispered. So was I said. Every single day. Savannah scoffed. This is unbelievable. I turned to her, not with anger, with clarity. What's unbelievable, I said evenly, is that you thought I came here for anything other than work. Her lips parted, but no words came. Graham returned moments later, gesturing toward the small stage set at the center of the ballroom. Lights dimmed, conversations hushed. I took one last look at Eli, his chin propped on his hand, watching me like I was the most important thing in the room. Then I walked forward. As I stepped onto the stage, the screen behind me lit up with the first image of the Sterling Green District. Glass, greenery, bridges instead of walls. I took a breath. Not because I was afraid, because I was ready. If you were in my place, knowing the man who hurt you would now have to watch you succeed in front of everyone, would you step onto that stage and speak your truth? Yes or no? The room faded the moment I began to speak. Not because the ballroom disappeared, but because everything that had once made me small lost its power. The screen behind me glowed with the vision I had carried for years. Buildings designed to breathe, public spaces meant to welcome, a city shaped by responsibility instead of ego. My name is Maya Hart, I said into the microphone, my voice steady, and I believe architecture should serve people, not intimidate them. I spoke about sustainability, about bridges instead of walls, about building places where children like my son could grow up knowing the world was made with them in mind. I spoke about responsibility, not just environmental but human, about the legacy we leave behind when we choose courage over convenience. As I talked, I felt something shift, not just in the room, but inside me. 7 years ago, I would have been terrified to stand here, afraid of judgment, afraid of being seen. Tonight, I was seen, and I didn't flinch. When the final slide faded, the silence lasted half a second longer than expected. Then the applause came. It started small, hesitant. Then it grew, swelling into something that filled the ballroom. People stood, some smiled, some wiped their eyes without realizing it. Eli jumped up from his chair and ran to the edge of the stage. I bent down and lifted him into my arms, holding him close as the applause continued. "This," I said softly into the microphone, my voice thick but clear, "is my son. Everything I build with his future in mind." The applause rose again, warmer this time. "Real." Graham stepped beside me and shook my hand firmly. "On behalf of Whitaker Holdings," he said, "we are proud to confirm our partnership with Meridian Build Group. Dr. Hart will serve as lead architect for the Sterling Green District." Cameras flashed, hands reached out, cards were exchanged, and somewhere in the crowd I saw Logan standing very still. He didn't clap, he didn't smile, he just watched. Later that night, when the ballroom had thinned and Eli had fallen asleep on a couch near the window, Logan approached me quietly. "Thank you," he said. I looked at him, surprised. "For what?" "For not tearing me apart up there," he replied. His voice was raw now, stripped of polish. "You could have." I considered that. Then I shook my head. "That wouldn't have helped anyone." We stood in silence for a moment. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he said, "but I'd like a chance to be something for Eli, if you ever decide that's right." I thought of all the nights I'd cried alone, all the times I'd told myself I didn't need anyone. And the truth was, I hadn't needed him, but Eli might. "We'll take it slow," I said finally. "On my terms, on Eli's terms. No promises you can't keep." Logan nodded, eyes shining. "I understand." That night, driving home through quiet streets, Eli stirred in his seat. "Mom," he murmured sleepily, "you were brave." I smiled, my eyes burning. "So were you." Life didn't become perfect after that. It never does. But it became honest. Logan showed up, carefully, consistently. Not as a hero, not as a savior, but as a man learning how to take responsibility. And I stayed exactly where I belonged. Strong, independent, and whole. I learned something important through all of it. Success isn't revenge. Dignity is. You don't win by humiliating the people who hurt you. You win by becoming someone they can no longer control. You win by choosing growth over bitterness. By teaching your children that love isn't proven by words but by presence. Families don't have to be perfect to be real. They just have to be built with honesty and care. And sometimes the happiest ending isn't about getting back what you lost, but realizing how much you gained without it. As you sit with this story, I wonder what stayed with you the most. Was it Maya's strength, Logan's regret, or Eli's quiet resilience? What would you have done in her place? If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And let me know where you're watching from, what country, what city, because stories like this connect us across borders. If you felt something tonight, please take a moment to like the video. It helps these stories reach people who might need them. And if you want more stories about resilience, growth, and quiet strength, subscribe and share this with someone who could use a reminder of their own worth. Thank you for listening. And remember, your past does not define your value. What you build from it does.